You're standing in the doorway. You've been gone 40 minutes. A grocery run. Nothing dramatic. And the moment your baby sees you, they burst into tears. Not the kind that mean something's wrong. The kind that seem to mean you're back. You scoop them up, and within 30 seconds, they're fine again. You're left wondering what just happened, and whether you somehow caused it. Most of the time, a parent in that moment lands on one of two explanations. Either they tell themselves the baby was tired, or they assume they did something wrong, that they left for too long, that the baby is too attached, that this level of reaction is a problem to solve. Both of those answers miss what's actually going on, and both of them leave the parent feeling vaguely guilty about something that isn't their fault. Here's what the science says. That cry, the one that gets louder the moment they see you, is not a sign of distress. It is the release of distress. And the difference between those two things is enormous. When you're gone, even briefly, your baby is working hard. John Bowlby, whose attachment research at the Tavistock Institute across the 1950s and 60s defined how we understand early bonding, described this as the activation of the attachment system, a biological alarm that registers the absence of the primary caregiver as a threat to survival. This isn't metaphor or poetic interpretation. In the infant brain, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reasoning, for context, for the understanding that things and people continue to exist when they're not visible, hasn't yet developed to the point where it can manage that information. The baby cannot think, "She went to the store and will be back." The absence is experienced as a pure physiological stressor, with no moderating narrative around it. Cortisol rises, the nervous system mobilizes, and because the infant has no other available strategy, the system stays mobilized until the specific thing that can deactivate it comes back into view. That last part is worth sitting with. The baby isn't just stressed by your absence. The baby is in a state that only your presence can resolve. Not any adult, not another kind face, yours specifically. Bowlby called this the concept of the attachment figure. The person whose proximity the infant is biologically wired to seek as a primary regulatory resource. In the earliest months of life, that relationship is usually singular and absolute. But here's the part that matters. During that mobilization, the baby has no reliable way to discharge the stress on their own. They can cry, they can fuss, but the full emotional release, the one that actually completes the stress response cycle, requires the specific presence of the attachment figure. Mary Ainsworth's Strange Situations studies at the University of Virginia, conducted throughout the 1960s and 70s, and replicated hundreds of times across different cultures since, showed that securely attached infants don't remain calm during separation. They protest. What makes them secure isn't the absence of protest. It's what happens upon reunion. The reunion cry is that completion. The nervous system, which has been holding the stress in suspension, finally has permission to let it go. The tears aren't triggered by your arrival. They're released by it. There's a meaningful difference between a cry that says something is wrong and a cry that says, "I was holding this and now I can finally put it down." What you're witnessing when your baby cries harder the moment they see you is the second kind. And once you've seen it that way, it's very hard to see it any other way. Megan Gunner at the University of Minnesota has spent decades studying cortisol in infants during separations and reunions, and her findings are striking. Securely attached babies show a sharp cortisol drop within minutes of reunion with a caregiver, faster and more complete than in less securely attached infants. The caregiver isn't just emotionally comforting the baby. They are literally biochemically regulating the baby's stress response. Your presence, specifically, is the mechanism by which the alarm gets turned off. The crying you hear is the sound of that mechanism engaging. Alan Shore, whose work at UCLA on right brain to right brain communication between caregivers and infants has shaped how clinicians understand early emotional development, describes this regulatory function as the foundation on which all future self-regulation is built. The baby who is repeatedly co-regulated by a caregiver, whose nervous system is brought back to baseline through reunion and contact, again and again, is gradually building the internal architecture for managing distress independently. They are learning at a neurological level that arousal states have endings, that distress is temporary, that someone comes. The reunion cry isn't just a release. In a very real sense, it's a lesson in emotional safety, encoded one reunion at a time. What's also worth understanding is that this regulatory cycle, stress, separation, reunion, release, isn't an accident of parenting style. It's the design. Human infants are born at a stage of neurological incompleteness unmatched by almost any other species, which means they arrive entirely dependent on external regulation for longer than any other mammal. The attachment system didn't evolve despite that vulnerability. It evolved because of it. The intensity of an infant's reunion response is proportional to the depth of the bond, not to the severity of a problem. Evolution, in this sense, is on your side. This is why the intensity often scales with how much the baby missed you. A 40-minute separation can produce a more dramatic reunion cry than a 5-minute one. A baby who was truly fine while you were gone, distracted, calm, managing, may save the entirety of the emotional discharge for the moment you walk back through the door. They weren't holding it together stoically. They were waiting, and the waiting ends when they see your face. There is also something worth saying to the parent who wonders if they're making their baby too dependent by responding consistently and quickly. The developmental research is clear on this point. Responsive caregiving in the first year does not produce dependent children. It produces children with a secure base, a felt sense of safety that actually makes exploration and independence easier over time, not harder. The reunion cry is evidence of secure attachment. It is something to be relieved by, not anxious about. One honest caveat: if reunion cries consistently escalate rather than resolve, if your baby can't settle within a few minutes of being held, or if they repeatedly push away and then cry harder in a pattern that repeats across many reunions, that's worth mentioning to a pediatrician. In most cases, it's temperament or a developmental phase. In some cases, it points to something the caregiver-baby dynamic could use support with, and early support consistently produces better outcomes than support sought later. You are the most qualified observer of your own child. Trust what you notice. But the ordinary reunion cry, the one that stops within a minute of being picked up, that resolves into calm against your shoulder, is not a red flag. It is, in a specific neurological sense, a green one. It means the attachment system is functioning exactly as it should. It means your baby registered your absence, held the stress, and knew exactly who to release it with. So the next time you come home to that cry, let yourself understand it for what it is. You are the person whose presence physically completes the release of their stress. You are the specific thing their nervous system was waiting for. The cry isn't an accusation, it's a relief. And the fact that it stops within seconds of being held tells you everything about what you actually mean to them, in a way that nothing else quite does. If this changes how you see your baby, I subscribe. Every video in this series goes this deep. Next, why newborns smile in their sleep and what the neuroscience says is actually happening when they do.